Hello everyone. When I present this poster, I usually start from the motivation. This poster studied the impact of the US interest rate hike cycle on Malaysian exchange rate and capital flows from 2015 to 2025. Over the past decades, the US Reserve has gone through several interest rate tightening cycles. These rate hikes do not only affect the US economy, but also create spillover effect on emerging markets. Malaysia is a small open economy, which means it is highly exposed to global financial conditions. When US interest rates rise, global investors often relocate their portfolios toward US assets, which can affect capital flows and exchange rate in countries like Malaysia. During the period from 2015 to 2025, Malaysia experienced noticeable movement in the Malaysian ringgit exchange rate and changes in capital flows, especially during periods of US monetary tightening. Therefore, the main objective of this study is to examine how US interest rate hikes influence Malaysian exchange rate and capital flows, and to understand the economic mechanism behind this movement using international monetary economy theories.
Okay, I will explain the theoretical background of our study. First, U.S. monetary policy is very important for the global economy. When the Federal Reserve increase interest rate, the impact is not only the U.S., it also affects emerging economics such as Malaysia. This is called spillover effect. The first rule, we use the interest rate parity. This rule explains the relationship between interest rate and exchange rate. When US interest rates are higher, investors prefer to move their money to the US. As a result, capital flows from emerging markets and local currencies may depreciation. This helps explain changes in the USD to ringgit exchange rate. The second rule is the module Fleming model. The model is used for small open economics with higher capital motility. It shows that when global interest rates rise, domestic monetary policy becomes less effective. Countries like Malaysia have limited control over exchange rate and capital flows. Finally, we look at the federal reverse spillover effects. Many studies show the U.S. interest rates like can cause capital outflows, currency depreciation, and tighter financial conditions in the emerging markets that affect are stronger when financial markets are higher connected. In summary, these series help us understand why US interest rate change can affect Malaysia. This provides the foundation to support our empirical funding later. Okay, thank you.
Now I will move on to part 3, data analysis and findings. This study used annual data from 2015 to 2024, focusing on three key variables: the US federal funds rate, the US MYR exchange rate, and the portfolio on three key variables. The U.S. Federal Funds Rate, the USD-MYR exchange rate, and the portfolio capital flows to Malaysia. All data are obtained from reliable sources, including the Federal Reserve Bank Negara Malaysia and the IMF, ensuring data consistency and credibility. Trend analysis. The data show clear U.S. monetary tightening cycles, especially during 2017 to 2018 and 2022 to 2023. During these periods, the Malaysia ringgit consistently depreciated against the U.S. dollar, indicating that U.S. interest rate hikes strengthened the dollar and placed downward pressure on MYR. This pattern suggests a strong external influence on Malaysia exchange rate dynamics. At the same time, Malaysia experienced net portfolio capital outflows, particularly in 2022 and 2023, reflecting investor performance for higher yield U.S. assets during global tightening. Key findings from the analysis. The three main findings emerge. First, U.S. interest rate hikes are closely associated with MYR depreciation. Second, capital outflows act as a key transmission channel linking U.S. monetary policy to Malaysia exchange rate movements. Third, will Malaysia domestic policy response helped reduce short-term volatility? They did not fully offset external monetary shocks, especially during periods of aggressive U.S. tightening. In summary, the data provides strong empirical evidence that U.S. monetary tightening significantly affect Malaysia exchange rate and capital flows. This finding highlights Malaysia's vulnerability as a small open economy, and they emphasize the importance of sound macroeconomic management in responding to global financial shocks.
Now I will briefly explain how we interpret our findings from an economy perspective. Overall, our result can be well explained using standard small open economy frameworks that are commonly used in international monetary economies. First, when U.S. interest rate increase, the interest rate differential between the U.S. and Malaysia becomes wider. Higher interest rate in the U.S. raise the return on U.S. financial assets, such as bonds and other dollar-denominated investment. As a result, global investors have a stronger incentive to shift their funds toward the U.S. market. This leads to capital outflows from Malaysia, as some investors reduce their exposure to Malaysian financial assets and relocate their portfolios toward the United States. These capital outflows increase the demand for U.S. dollars in the foreign exchange market. At the same time, the supply of Malaysian ringgit increases as investors sell ringgit-denominated assets. This imbalance between demand and supply puts downward pressure on the Malaysian ringgit. Consequently, the Malaysian ringgit depreciates against the U.S. dollar for U.S. investor rate hikes. This mechanism is consistent with the basic institution of interest rate differential and capital mobility in open economies. In addition, our results show that during periods of aggressive U.S. monetary tightening, exchange rate volatility tends to increase. This suggests that external monetary shocks not only affect the level of the exchange rate, but also make exchange rate movement more unstable. For emerging economies like Malaysia, this volatility reflects uncertainty in global financial markets and repeat adjustment in international capital flows. Overall, our findings are consistent with interest rate, partly conditions, and small open economy models, which emphasize the important role of external interest rate shocks and international capital movements. Finally, I will summarize the key takeaways from this study. This study finds that U.S. interest rate hikes are closely associated with depreciation of the Malaysian ringgit and capital outflows from Malaysia over the period from 2015 to 2025. The Emperor results suggest a strong link between U.S. monetary tightening and financial conditions in Malaysia. More importantly, our findings highlight that external monetary conditions, especially U.S. monetary policies, play a major role in shaping exchange rate dynamics in small open economies like Malaysia. Changes in global interest rate can have significant spillover effect, even when domestic economic conditions remain relatively stable. Although domestic fundamentals such as economic growth and inflation are important, our results suggest that they may not be sufficient to fully offset the impact of external monetary shocks during periods of global tightening. This means that Malaysia remains highly sensitive to global financial cycles. In particular, exchange rate movements in Malaysia cannot be fully understood without considering international monetary spillovers and global capital flows. External shocks can be domestic factors, especially during periods of highlighted global uncertainty. Overall, this study emphasized the importance of closely monitoring global monetary development when analyzing exchange rate behavior in emerging markets. Understanding the influence of the U.S. monetary policy is essential for explaining exchange rate inflation and capital flows dynamic in small open economies like Malaysia. That's our presentation. Thank you.